Anyways.
Oh, Andrea Tessmann.
Yes, Kirk Buchner?
I would ask you what you were doing on February 10th, 1979. I know the answer. You weren't born yet. I, however, was.
No.
I, however, was, but I would only be a youngin', a 6-year-old. No, 7. 6, 7, 11, 12. One of the two. But it was an interesting time. You know how we talked about Westworld last year and the worlds that should be created? I maintain 1979 New York City would be incredible. You just find, and then like the ultimate prize in the center of the maze is you just get your way to, you get into Studio 54.
Yeah, pretty much.
So on this particular day, the 21st Grammys happened. Album of the year, and how perfect is this? Saturday Night Fever soundtrack. Best best pop female, Anne Murray, You Needed Me. Yeah. Best male pop female, Barry Manilow, Copacabana. And a song of the year, and I swear I didn't plan this, was one I kind of hummed at the end of our last week's show. Billy Joel, Just the Way You Are. Did I not say to you at the end, don't go change it?
It's true.
Yeah. So, yeah, don't change the color of your hair. And in my, by the way, since I open up on everything, I am in my midlife crisis. I have blonde highlights now. Picture. I wish I was making that up, but I'm not.
Like highlights or like frosted tips?
No, not frosted tips. It's not 2001. No, because I figure all my grays coming in on my sides and the back, but when I cut it really short, you don't see it. And yeah, so this is my midlife crisis. I don't care about cars. I'm not cheating on my wife. So this is the closest to a midlife crisis I'm going to get, are little subtle blonde highlights. That now I'm not longer a 4, I'm a 4.1, baby. Yeah. But I figured you'd get a you'd just sort of laugh at that because I'm an open book. It's all good, and I don't care. I should, but I don't. But back to February 10th. If you were listening to the radio, what were you listening to? It would be disco everywhere. And Rod Stewart hit number 1 again with Do You Think I'm Sexy? My karaoke staple. Maybe I should do that again down here in this island, because I do a lot of karaoke. Maybe the answer won't be when I say, if you want my body and you think I'm sexy, come on, baby, let me know. Maybe they'll say, yeah, okay. Because usually they just leave.
Yeah, no, they might say, hey, maybe.
Probably not. Although I am better looking in Barbados than I am in Canada. I'm white boy exotic, if that makes any sense.
I don't know that your version of pasty white boy counts as exotic, but I guess next to the Bajans it does.
Well, that's why I prefaced it by saying white boy exotic. Ooh. If I'm going to be a rapper, that's going to be my name, White Boy Exotic. Maybe it shouldn't be.
I'll wait for you dropping your first track.
Yeah, well, we'll be waiting a while on that one. The more I looked at this song, Andrea, the more I was fascinated by the year of 1979. Rod, as we know, he was already well established. He was a member of the rock band, was it the Small Faces? No, the Faces, when he joined with Ron Wood, the future Rolling Stone. He already had probably one of the greatest rock and roll story songs, but earlier in the decade with Maggie May. I've never talked about that, but I could sort of see you sort of playing that with your acoustic guitar in the backyard.
Oh, sure. I mean, I haven't. I don't know how to the chords, but I could picture that.
Yeah, and it's a great song. Rod was already established by the early 70s as a bona fide hit machine, kept going, hit after hit after hit in the rock vein. I don't think that he ever replicated Maggie May. I don't think he ever came close. That's not necessarily a shot at Rod, which I will take shots at Rod later, but it's just that Maggie May was just so good.
Yes. And I'm, I think like you, not generally a Rod Stewart fan, Sir Roderick Stewart, but yeah. There's a few gems of his that I enjoy, and that is one of them.
Mm-hmm. And then the weird thing sort of happened. Disco hit in 75, 76, depending on what musical historian you want to go with. And a lot of artists experimented with that. And it really pissed off a lot of their core fans.
Yeah.
You know, we mentioned WKRP a few weeks ago. Mm-hmm. All right, so I still remember Johnny Fever saying, like, "Man, don't make me play disco. Don't make me play disco." You know, they were. If you like disco, you might like something else. If you were into, I don't know, let's say Rush, for lack of a better rock band, you were not listening to disco.
No,
it just wasn't happening. But musicians aren't the same as fans. They listen to other things. They experiment. They try. Rod Stewart was one of them, but he wasn't alone. There's actually an iTunes playlist, and I forgot what it's called, but it's basically rock stars going disco.
Yeah, there were a few out there. And listening to the couple that I came across, I'm like, I guess I never really associated them with disco because I associated them more with the band and the style that I associate the band with rather than them being a one-off disco track. Right.
Which is probably why they were able to survive when disco crashed and burned in 1980. Rod Stewart being one of them. Others being the Rolling Stones with Miss You, just an incredible track. Chicago, I believe Street Sounds. I'm blanking on it. One didn't survive, the Bee Gees, who were these great introspective songwriters in the vein of folk and pop, and then they just commissioned to do a soundtrack. They did it better than anyone imagined, and then they were screwed.
Yeah, they were just so pigeonholed into that disco style that when nobody wanted to listen to new disco anymore, they had nowhere to go.
No, like they were. It's like they apologized for years, saying like, "Yeah, we're sorry. Like, really, we're sorry." And now they don't have to be sorry anymore. I mean, I think people recognize disco for what it was. I love disco. It's a fun genre that never took itself seriously. You and I talked about reggae last week, or a couple weeks ago. Sorry.
Yeah. Weeks ago.
And reggae can be fun, but it can also be very political, very introspective, like anything you want it to be. Disco can't. Disco it's fun, it's party music, that's what it is. It's not it's not pretentious. So if you were into the punk scene, which was pretty big then, you're not going to be into disco. If you were into the rock scene, you weren't into that. And you were considered not cool if you were. It's a very strange year. Because you couldn't be one or the other.
No, and you think that, I mean, punk is just inherently political. The whole point of punk is being angry and raging. Rock can do various things, but you're not going to get a huge amount of hard rock fans that are into disco. There's always going to be some crossover, but yeah, I totally, it's very polarizing in terms of the styles of music that were popular.
Well, and I looked at the number one songs in the first half of 1979. So the Bee Gees' Too Much Heaven, which really isn't a disco track, but at that point, anything they touched was considered disco. Chic with The Freak. Just Nile Rodgers, probably one of the top 5, if not the number one best bass player ever. The ultimate disco song for a lot of people, and I don't know how this became a gay anthem. Someone's going to have to explain this to me. I Will Survive, Gloria Gaynor. I don't know why that is a gay anthem.
I don't either. Maybe it's just perseverance against you know.
Or maybe she worked the gay
the
clubs then.
Persecution. I don't know. And yeah, honestly, probably it was just played a lot in the clubs.
Another great disco tune, Knock on Wood, Amy Stewart. Blondie, which a lot of people think from that song, just going back, they're a disco group. They weren't. They were one of the most diverse groups ever with Heart of Glass. And they had their reggae hit. They had their rap crossover. Just brilliant band. Anita Ward, Ring My Bell. Chic again, Good Times. But then by the end of the year, it wasn't as much. The Commodores with Still, the Eagles, Heartache Tonight, Rupert Holmes, the Pina Colada song. We're going to do that one of these days. And I'm not going to be kind to it. But this was the year that it hit its apex, but it's also the year that the massive crash hit. But I guess before we get to the crash, we got to look at this song. I love this song. It's cheesy. It's horrible. It is my go-to karaoke song.
So I got to say, reading up about the song, and there's a few different versions of how it came to be, but it seems for the most part, the studio wanted a somewhat disco track along the lines of, what's it called? You just said it before. Why am I blanking?
Mm-hmm.
Anyways.
Yeah, a lot of them, because Stewart was coming off a couple big number ones too earlier. Like, what was it? You're in my heart, you're in my soul. I think that was earlier in the year. I blanking on the title, but disco was selling.
So they were wanting something disco-ish, not Bee Gees, but more in the strain that the rock bands were releasing.
Right.
Like Miss You from the Stones, which was recently just a huge hit. Mm-hmm. And at the time, rock band, the big names, they were allowed to just kind of go into the studio and tootle around until something came to them. It wasn't like now where you would go to the studio with a fully ready to produce album. Mm-hmm. It was just like, we're just going to fuck around. And my favorite, I think, thing about this story is that, so they write the song, and then it turns out that the da 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 is actually completely ripped off from a Brazilian samba record that he had apparently heard when he was partying with Elton John at Rio a few months before. So they were getting faced in Rio, and this song was apparently playing everywhere because it was just a smash hit samba song. And then
you can swear, Andrea. We have the big E in front of it for explicit, so you can just say shit-faced.
Oh yeah, pretty sure there was probably a significant amount of cocaine going on.
Not in '78, no.
I mean, it is Elton John in 1978.
Mm-hmm.
So so there was this song that he ripped off entirely. He just completely stole the melody, and then was sued for it. And he was like, oops, my bad, and had to give up a significant chunk of the royalties.
Oopsie poopsie.
Like, and I'm like, you know what? He probably doesn't actually remember that it was someone else's song, because he was probably so shit-faced. And, I mean, I would have been if I was at Carnival in 1978. That just seems like a good thing to be doing.
Yeah, I can't say that I've ever been to Carnival at all. That would be another good Westworld. Brazil Carnival.
Yeah. Yeah, I would. I think Carnival would be a cool place to go. But no traveling for a while, so that ain't going to happen.
Well, luckily we both live on islands.
This is true.
Yeah. Myself in Barbados, you in Vancouver Island, just for those listening. Not that anyone's going to stalk us. Well, they might stalk you, Andrea. You've got that come hither voice. But you're a white chick, so maybe you do. I don't know.
So, anyways, this Brazilian musician Jorge Ben wrote this song called Taj Mahal, and then I also read something afterwards that there's an artist named Taj Mahal that wrote a song called Jorge Ben, and the entire words of the song are Jorge Ben. So I don't know if that's true or not, but I had a good chuckle at it.
That's awesome. But, Rod could afford it. So Rod could easily afford sort of like, okay, if he made that mistake, whatever. I mean, I think he was, from what I read, he was a little bit pretentious on it, but, he paid out.
Yep, he did. So that's fine. And then I also heard that royalties from the song later were donated to the UNICEF fundraiser.
Oh, okay.
But
the song itself, well, for me, it's the video. Or I guess back then it was like promo videos. I don't know that they called them videos back then. Because in the 70s, you weren't really...
It's before the age of MTV.
Right.
So I gotta say, I mean, he got backlash because people were thinking he was singing about himself, when in reality, if you listen to the verses and not just the chorus, the whole thing is third person.
Sure.
So
when you watch the video, what is he, third personing himself?
It's just throwing, like it's spoofing the whole picking up someone at the bar. That's all it is. It's, she's sitting at the bar and, are we going to do anything? And yeah, and I gotta say,
waiting for sorry, it's my karaoke.
But I gotta say, it's very much not misogynistic for what the storyline is, but a guy picking up a chick at the bar and taking her home. Like,
I never thought of that.
There's a lot of consent involved in here. Because at first I was going to make a comparison to Blurred Lines or something like that, and then I was like, actually, this is completely consensual. There's no coercion in any of this. He's outright just saying, if you want me, then let's go home together. But it's not, there's no sneakiness or like, maybe I should buy her another drink to loosen her up or anything.
Interesting.
So from a like 21st century, like how woke is this song? It's doing okay.
Yeah. I didn't think we were going to go there, but then this also reminds me of why, when I conceived this idea of doing this show, I wanted to have a female co-host.
Yes, we have different perspectives for sure, and different things we pick up on. So let's go back to the video though, because it's brilliant. Like half of the video is him just shaking his ass in leather pants,
which doesn't have much of an ass.
He doesn't, but he sure wiggles it a lot. I'm
going to shout out to my dad right now, because my dad, who I wish I would have come up with shit my dad says before somebody came up with shit my dad says. Because holy crap, that shit my dad says. But I told him what I was doing tonight. We're doing that song. And, okay, I know that song. Oh, yeah. Well, the answer is no, he's not. So... I have to agree with him, but I'm not his demographic. I honestly generally don't understand what makes a male attractive. There are few when women gush over someone, I get it. Gerard Butler's one. Clooney's one. Bieber's not.
No.
Rod Stewart is not.
But Bieber's just a child. Like,
true.
I'm not gonna gush over like children. There's some pretty boy older actors that are handsome, or musicians or whatever. Like Ryan Reynolds, he was the sexiest man alive. I don't get the Rod Stewart finger and light socket hair,
which he still has. Signature. He still has it. He's like pretty much had that whole thing the whole time. And like in that video, it's pretty much 3 scenes, right? So it's like him in his band playing. Then he's at a bar. where he's wearing the same clothes he was when he was singing.
On stage. Yep.
And just everywhere he goes, there's TV of him actually singing in the same damn clothes. And I'm thinking, like, holy shit, if I could go somewhere at a bar back in my single days and just like, hey, look up there. There I am. Well, no, it's definitely me. Look, I'm wearing the same goddamn outfit.
I gotta say, like, those leather pants would be pretty disgusting after dancing around on stage in them all night. So if you're trying to pick up a chick at the bar, don't wear day-old leather pants, please.
I've never seen a man wear leather pants. I mean, I'm sure it's happened many times. I've seen some women at the hotel we used to. Well, you worked. I was a husband there with someone. There
was someone who regularly wore pleather pants. There's someone at my work now who regularly wears pleather pants. I'm not going to judge them.
Right.
But I don't know if I've ever seen a guy wear them.
I don't know that it's a good look for anyone. But that whole video too, where they're just looking at each other, and Rod's working his eyes, and like, okay.
And she's like, raising an eyebrow and like seductively sucking on her straw, and like,
no subtlety there. And then they go back. They go back to his place, which I guess looked like a hotel room. And sure enough, they put up. I don't know why they had the TV on, but there was Rod again on TV.
You need some background ambiance, right? Like, you need yourself projected on the TV when you're in the room. Just sets the mood.
I guess. I mean, like, we all have different turn-ons. People listening here clearly know that mine are not white women, but I don't know that I necessarily need to have a cornucopia of, Miss Universes walking around on the back. I didn't know where to end that sentence without it sounding awful. It was.
You don't need to be looking at yourself to get off, is what you're saying.
Well, I don't. I sure as hell don't want to. I know what I look like. God damn it. I mean,
that's a weird fetish.
I'm sure that exists. Wow, who would get off looking at themselves?
I don't know, but there's got to be some fetish out there about, like, having sex with your clone.
This has gone to a very Star Trek kind of place. My God.
Please, back to the video.
Yeah, because this is going to, like, keep me up all night. But but please, back to the video. Jesus Christ, Andrea.
I just like to be able to disturb you once in a while.
Well, once a week anyway.
So I don't know what else to say about this video. It is
I got one.
Super cheesy.
I got one interesting thing too. So like, you notice like the bass player is an Asian gentleman.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So because I remembered that, and just I thought, okay, he's bouncing around, and then I found an interview with him. He's a Jamaican.
Really?
Yes. Last name Chen, but like Chinese Jamaican.
Okay.
And which is, and I've actually known a couple Chinese Jamaicans in my day, but it still always makes me laugh. And if that sounds offensive, I'm sorry, but a Jamaican accent out of a Chinese body is weird. It just is. Call me whatever you want.
Your brain doesn't quite make that association very well. I can see that. Yeah.
Yeah, actually, he used to... Yeah, he's been like, he's just sort of like done with almost everyone. Like, you're doing well when you're in sort of like the house band of Rod Stewart in the 70s and then all this other stuff. It's pretty awesome. So I just sort of like wanted to throw that out. I guess with 79, I sent you a message, and I don't know if you know what I meant by this. I was going to like tie this in with baseball. And I don't know if you know where I'm going with this.
No, not entirely.
Okay. There was an event held in Chicago. It was the White Sox hosting, because like baseball, for those who don't sort of like follow that, you're always trying to come up with some kind of promotion to get someone to the ballpark. So they had Disco Demolition Night, a strange event that was held on July 12th of 1979. And
yes, I did read about this.
Okay, and I didn't tell you where I was going to go, so I wasn't sure if when I sent you this, you knew that, but I think it sort of ties in with this weird year of '79. And for those not unaware, Disco Demolition Night was a promotion where people would bring in their disco records and they were going to blow them up in the middle of the field during the intermission of a doubleheader. Yeah,
and they were getting a deeply discounted ticket for bringing in the albums too. So it wasn't just like you brought in your album, but they got cheap tickets and they got to watch Explosion.
Mm-hmm. And that's essentially what happened. They did it. People rioted, and this is sort of ties in with what we were saying before. Just people either loved or hated their disco, and if you loved disco, you were not someone to be, I don't want to say trusted, but it's a weird thing. I've been reading so many things about that. One that just was written two years ago, where they said, okay, well, you know what? If you hated disco, you were homophobic, you were racist. Like, really? Okay,
that's a bit much.
Totally is. Because there were, okay, and they said, well, look at the Village People. How did you not know they were gay? A lot of people in the late 70s did not know that the Village People were gay, because not all of them were. But it's...
No, and with that, you could say that the Bee Gees were all gay, too. Like, it's the style of music they're singing, and it's what they're doing, you know?
No,
just because that became associated with being gay doesn't mean that because they were doing that at the time, they were gay.
Right, and like we just talked about Gloria Gaynor, like that became a gay icon song. You think that the people who are blowing those disco albums up, throwing their fists up for Iron Maiden, no, they weren't around then, Black Sabbath had any clue about all this stuff? They didn't think about it. I'm going to take this into a completely different tangent just because, well, A, it's my show, and B, I'm kind of curious. We can go anywhere we want with this, right? So with me being like about a decade older than you, because when you went to high school, was it in a big city or medium city?
I was in North Vancouver, so big city.
Okay, so big city, so bigger than me. And the reason why I ask this, and just sort of like to paint a picture of why this was not necessarily homophobic. When I went to school, obviously there had to have been some gay people in high school. I didn't know any, but I'm sure there were looking back. Obviously there were. Would that have been the same case for you? Where, I mean, there probably was, but you didn't know because that wasn't talked about back then?
There were people that we figured were probably gay, but I don't think there was anyone openly gay.
Right, whereas nowadays...
although at the time there were probably a few budding bisexual girls that were doing it more for popularity than anything.
I wish I was at your school.
It was the age of the goths, so girls were rebelling in that sort of way.
Yeah.
Although there wasn't quite the stigma. Like, well, when I was in high school, I had an openly gay uncle, so it wasn't really. I didn't really think much of it if someone was gay, but I don't think there was anybody in or around my grade. But I did have a graduating class of almost 200 kids. So,
and I guess why I sort of like bring that up is I don't think that this was like a rebellion because there are people like retroconning the story in this. It was like Trump supporters back then. Like, no, it wasn't. It was a bunch of people who just wanted their music to be serious, even though a lot of their own music wasn't. That's all it was. If like the biggest people who were actually out, they didn't know. Liberace never admitted he was gay.
That's true.
Like it was a different time back then.
So I'm pretty sure Elton John was open about it the whole time.
Yeah, but Elton John also married.
That's true.
So he like when I say married, for those not aware, for our younger listeners, no, he married a female. So like he sort of like put that doubt, so people could say, oh no, he was just shooting his mouth off, just trying to get attention.
So I gotta say, I was looking into the Elton John Rod Stewart relationship because they've been buddies forever, up until recently when they had a blowout over something stupid. But they forever were just ribbing at each other and like making just they were frenemies, I think. But they were and what got me started on it was the fact that they were partying together in Rio, and then when I was reading something about the plagiarism of the song, and it's something that said, and Elton John wouldn't let him live it down based on this. You can see him get, talking about it in this interview that the two of them had together. And I couldn't find that specific interview, but I found a couple of others, and the two of them were buddies. Like they were on talk shows together. They were and just cracking jokes at each other's expense the whole time, good-naturedly. And even still, I saw a recent interview with Elton John on Graham Norton, and he made a joke about how, he still is, or at the time, this might have been 3 or 4 or 5 years ago, but he's still making good music, and, he's not going to start bowing down to the producers because they want a Christmas album or they want a remake of your hits, because I'll leave that to Rod Stewart and fuck you. And I was like, oh great. So they just had this good-natured bromance, but it was really funny because when they were doing an interview together, the interviewer said, how long has this been going on? And Rod Stewart goes, well, we've been in a relationship let me rephrase that. We've been friends. So it was an interesting, at the time, it was obvious that Elton John was gay. So, and they were even like making little digs about it amongst themselves, even on TV.
But, it's one of those things where you believe what you want to believe. And I say this as, I don't think we've ever discussed this. I'm a diehard pro wrestling fan. Yeah. No, it's just like as a kid, like everything is, but you play around with it, and then you sort of like work it around. Like, okay, well, this guy's Thor, and the other guy is Loki. It just works.
Suspended disbelief.
Absolutely, and it's fantastic.
It's why we can watch movie after movie of the Avengers and still enjoy it.
No, for sure. Yeah, and actually, when you were talking about that relationship, it sort of reminded me of like everything I've ever read about Bowie and Jagger. Although I do believe they probably did sleep together. I honestly believe that.
Both of them are very gender fluid, it appears. I don't know. They both were always very much,
You cannot watch the Dancing in the Streets video and tell me that they don't know what each other's cock tastes like. You cannot tell me that. And I love them both. I didn't realize how much I loved Bowie until he died. I was heartbroken. I'm wearing a David Bowie t-shirt right now, actually.
Had to watch Labyrinth just to see that, the stuffed front on those tight pants.
Okay, well, you and I got different things out of that, but that's okay. That's okay.
Dear.
So I guess moving on, from 79 we get to 1980, and disco was taking a shit kicking. You and I covered a lot of that in our first ever show, Stars on 45. See the callback? See, I love what we do. And by that point, like we mentioned, Rod was fine. The Stones were fine. Kiss, who did, I forgot to mention them, that I Was Made for Loving You. They weren't as big as they were, but they were still went back to, their standard rock. Chicago reinvented themselves a little bit. And Rod, he went into what I like to call housewife rock. Just boring stuff. Still super successful. I guess adult contemporary housewife rock. But two number one hits in the late 80s. Forever Young, Downtown Train. Bleh. I don't care for either of them. I don't care for anything he's done since 1980, frankly. Don't like any of it.
No. And as I said with the Elton John reference, he went into doing the Christmas albums, and he just was doing shit for money. He wasn't being creative for the sake of being creative or for creating good music anymore. He was just pandering to the masses,
which is fine. And he did a great job. I mean, like he had a massive hit in 1971 that is a rock staple. And a number one hit in the early 90s when he did that trio, All for Love with Sting and Bryan Adams, which I called at the time. And now that seems very homophobic, but screw it, my show, I'll say it. I've evolved, I changed. I called them the Three Musketeers of Queer. I hated that. I hated that shit. And now I've evolved.
So 1990s. Kids. Like that was the housewife rock. As you just labeled it perfectly. It's just attractive, now middle-aged or then middle-aged singers pandering to the horny housewives that aren't getting it from their husbands.
You know, if I've got that ever issue and my wife's sort of like thinking of, you know what, Rod, I want me some of Rod. I've really failed.
But it's a different era now, too.
Yeah, okay, sure. So what would be the modern equivalent?
Transport yourself back 20 years, 25 years, and then see.
So for me, I guess I'll sort of like wrap up like my thoughts. I, again, loved going back here, and I mostly loved focusing on that weird 1979 year. Just where everything was so tribalistic in music. And now I just love the fact that I don't want to say that nobody, but people like what they like. And that's awesome. That was not the case in 1979. Because Rod gained some fans and he lost a bunch. And then he had to sort of like reprove himself, which was not hard for him to do. I also leave with this. To me, Rod Stewart, I think, even though he's a two-time Rock and Roll Hall of Famer, his voice, he should have done a lot more rock-centric songs. His voice is just meant for blues rock, and he didn't do enough of it, my opinion.
I agree. I'm not a fan of his. He's a very scratchy sort of voice for... Not great for ballads, but it works for blues.
Yeah, so I mean, I think it's weird to say. I wish Rod Stewart would have been more. I don't want to say more successful because that's not right either. But
the dude is worth over $200 million. I don't think he could really be much more successful.
So about 190 million more than me.
Sure.
Thank you. Thanks for letting me have that. Any final words on Rod before you tell us who we're doing next week?
No, I think we've surmised 1979 Rod pretty well.
Awesome. All right, who we got? Who's up next?
So, I decided we were going to go to 1990.
Okay.
To a female pop band that had their first number one hit as their very first single release off of their first album.
Okay.
Nominated for 5 Grammy Awards.
Okay.
We're going with Wilson Phillips. Hold On. And I only picked this song because I got in the car with my friend the other day and it came on the radio and we both immediately burst into song. I was like, hey, I bet this is a good one to do.
Yeah, okay. Yes, I think there's a few things to unpack on this very interesting trio that... I was going to say it could have been bigger, but like when that came out, that was massive.
Mm-hmm. It was like the biggest song of the year, pretty much.
With their father. Yeah, okay, I like it. Andrea, well done.
All right. So we will reconvene next week and discuss Hold On, the 1990 smash pop anthem by Wilson Phillips. Awesome.
And you are welcome in the fact that I did not ask you the main question, do you think I'm sexy? I already know the answer. But
we'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, well, exactly. Sounds good. Stay safe, Andrea Tessmann.
Have a good night, Kirk.
Thank you so much for listening. Stay tuned for a lot more content from NotInHallOfFame.com, and we hope everyone stays safe.